So after having made a list of the most important steps we have to take before leaving here 3 days from now, naturally the one that we decided to start tackling today at 7 p.m. is the one that involves, digging up our foundation. No big deal. Another baseboard, another problem. So we're here in the hallway, the corridor, and on the wall that separates the two halves of the house right here. So that's where the radiator used to be. And the problem on this one is that the baseboard, specifically right behind the radiator, is super swollen and like pushing out from the wall. We're thinking it's probably just moisture from when the radiators exploded and just the wood swelled up and took a bunch of water. The floor is also kind of swollen, but it does mean that when we try to mount the baseboard's not going to sit level at all because it's at a very severe angle. So we're going to carefully take our oscillating tool and remove a section of this baseboard and just check out what's behind the wall, make sure that everything is okay, there's no mold, like see if there's a problem, and then we're going to try to remount it plumb, so that when we attach the baseboard heater to the baseboard, everything is sitting nice and level, or at least more level than it is now. I'm just trying to catch the swelling, but it's like not super easy to see. See, this big gap right here is starting to open up and get quite large. So I need to see what's behind there. Looking at it further, I suspect the problem actually predates the radiator exploding, because it looks like there is some paint on top of the shmoo that has accumulated as the baseboard has pushed out, which suggests to me that it happened way before, that the problem at least was starting well before the baseboards exploded, and that maybe all the extra water is just aggravating the situation. Phil, you want to show us a close-up on the painted shmoo?
Big crack, old crack, full of paint, all the way to the very edge here. So that predates the explosion of the radiator.
Which means we might be opening a can of worms by pulling this baseboard out, so it's okay. It's not like we're on a time limit or anything. So quick refresher to explain the look on my face and the whole situation here. We were in a bit of a race against the clock because we had to leave the house in 3 days to get back to Montreal to go on a contract. It was a very hard and fast deadline, and we had to finish installing the heating at least here on the main floor, or else we risked not having heating in the house for a second winter in a row. I mean, I bought the house in the summertime, but the previous owner didn't have heating in it for the winter before that. So not great for a house to just leave it without heat, especially in Canadian winters. Look at that beefy floor. So we've got the regular floor, and then we've got what looks like at least 2 layers of floor underneath it. It is so thick. Also, we can see that these floorboards are very swollen with water here, probably from where the radiator exploded, because the floor underneath is not swollen, pretty flat. I cannot stress enough how much I do not love cutting into and potentially destroying an original piece of the house, but the only other alternative to get it off the wall was literally to start uninstalling the hardwood flooring, and that was a can of worms that we absolutely did not have time to open.
It's not really budging. Can't see. This here?
Yeah.
That's a nail. We cut it on its body length. Like we split the nail in half. That's why it was hard and it felt like it wasn't cuttable. So you have to come see this.
Now, I hate to leave you on a cliffhanger here, folks, but that is actually the last clip that I have before we lost power. So if you remember back to last week's episode, there was a hurricane coming. It was impending, you might say, and while a proper YouTuber probably would have taken full advantage of the hurricane and losing power to whip out the camera and vlog and, you know, potentially over dramatize the situation, I definitely am missing that gene. I do not have the over dramatization gene, so I'm happy to report that we actually stayed quite safe. There were definitely some strong winds and heavy rain, and we did lose power for the rest of the evening and into the next morning. So without the power on in the house, there was, as you can imagine, limited light to see by and limited juice for the power tools. So we knocked off work pretty quickly and just decided to go outside and check out the storm for ourselves. And now we have power again. It is the next morning. We survived the brunt of the hurricane. Honestly, it wasn't really that bad, but let's take a look at some of the work that got done yesterday while we were lacking power and significant lighting. So to touch base on where we are with this baseboard situation here, fun things have been happening. So first of all, we discovered that the main reason the baseboard was bulging was not, fortunately, that there was any problem with the plaster itself. Doesn't seem to be any mold. The plaster's in pretty good shape for a 120-year-old plaster. What seems to have been the problem was that when they built the floors here, they have the classic plaster and lath, which we can see here. Then they had between the plaster and the floorboards, they had these little vertical runs of just individual pieces of lath sticking up. They were attached from well underneath the floor and going up, and basically going up just the height of the finished baseboard. And I'm assuming that's so that the carpenters had something maybe to nail the baseboard into, because you can't really nail the baseboard just into the plaster. I don't know exactly why there were these little pieces of lath there, but what had happened was over the years, the floor has swelled somewhat. I think this was happening well before the radiators exploded, just because, as I pointed out earlier, there's like paint in some of the bulging areas, which implies to me that it was bulging a long time ago and quite slowly, and people were just kind of painting over it as it got worse and worse. For sure, the explosion of the radiators didn't help, probably expedited the process, but what had happened is that as the floor swelled and expanded, it pinched in on the bottom of those pieces of lath where it was meeting the floor, and by pinching the bottom, it kind of forced the top part to boonk, go away from the wall like that. So if we look at this angle here, you can actually see that there's an air gap here at the top of this baseboard. There's space between the plaster and the baseboard. So it's not a problem with the plaster. Plaster is not bulging. It's really just those little pieces of vertical lath popping away from the wall because they're being pinched by the floor. So what we've done is we've gone in and basically, as you can see here, kind of gutted it all. So we removed the baseboard, we removed the little pieces of vertical lath. I will say that getting that baseboard out was an absolute monster, because the baseboard itself was installed before the floors. It extends down below the floorboards, which means that to get it out, we had to kind of tear it into a few different pieces. So we have the main section of baseboard, which is intact, in which we will be cleaning up and reinstalling. But to get the sections that were sitting underneath the level of the floorboard, that got a little bit messy, and that came out in tons of little splinters, and was quite messy and fussy, if I'm being honest. So where we're at right now is cleaning up the main piece of baseboard, just trying to make it so that it will fit back in place here so that we can install it, because we would like to install this section, just the part that goes behind the baseboard heater here. We'd like to take care of that now before we drill the holes to put the baseboard in. and install everything, because while the baseboard heater for the moment will probably be living up here temporarily, higher than it will eventually live in its forever home, it's just going to be an absolute bear to kind of properly do this baseboard while there's, you know, the pipes and the PEX and everything running here. So we're gonna try and get this section that we've already torn out. You can see it's, you know, a decent chunk, but it's not the whole stretch of baseboard. We're gonna try and get that fixed now. Then at some point, I am suspecting we're gonna have to go back in and do the same treatment to the other two lengths, the existing lengths of baseboard at either end, but that can wait and happen later, you know, when we have more time. Right now we're on a deadline because our plumber is coming tomorrow, unless, you know, he gets called away emergency wise. But since the hurricane honestly wasn't that bad, I do have my fingers crossed that he'll be able to make it here tomorrow. Then if we move into the kitchen, we can take a look at the other bit of progress that happened yesterday off camera, and that is, I don't know if you can tell, but we ripped out large chunks of this nasty flooring here in the entryway. I'm not entirely sure what came over us, but basically, I don't know, we've always been kind of wanting to rip off this floor because we suspect it's kind of nasty underneath. We have huge problems with the door here, the threshold, possibly also the sill plate underneath this section of the house. I don't know, this front hallway has always kind of smelled moldy, mildewy, and having seen the state of the threshold of that door, we were thinking, okay, there's probably a lot of moisture in here, stuff has to come up. So we took this cheap flooring up, at least a section of it. We're quite surprised and thrilled to find what is probably quite decent looking hardwood flooring underneath. There's been some interesting patchwork and feathering in, and I would love to know the history of what all happened in this room to get the flooring the way it is, but we do have hardwood under here, which is kind of fun. How's it going?
I made a thing. It's hard to say. It's missing a little bit here, but let's try it first. Do we need to go under the 2/8 maybe, you know, to be up here?
Okay.
I just want to see how it's fitting right now before I cut more.
All right, we're gonna leave Phil to fiddle around with those baseboards over there while we focus on the baseboards in this room down here, because they are getting a little bit of an upgrade today with these. These are Snap Powers LED illuminated cover plates. They sent these to me. They are sponsoring today's video, but I think they're actually a really cool product. I think we're gonna give them a try because they're gonna take the place of kind of like a 2-for-1 situation we've got going on here. If we look at this outlet here, for example, this is the one in the main corridor on our side of the house. You can see we've got night lights in it. These are here on a regular basis, and it is because our bedroom's on the top floor, the bathroom is on the main floor, and if you gotta pee in the middle of the night, it's nice to have a little light to see by. So every outlet that we have along the way is illuminated with a little light switch. These are just various light switches scrounged up. So I think what we're gonna do today is we're gonna switch these out for the cover plates by Snap Power. It should be really easy, really quick. No electrician needed for this installation. Should be as simple as taking out the screw and the switch plate from the old one and putting the new cover plate on. Now, I'm not kidding when I say that the hardest part of this install was finding the proper screwdriver for the job, but for those who need a bit more guidance, they do include a very thorough list of step-by-step instructions. But honestly, it is exactly as easy as it looks. There aren't any wires or batteries. I just swapped this cover plate out with my old ones, and just like that, I had a built-in nightlight to illuminate my hallway. Well, that was incredibly easy and fast, and I'm really happy with the product. Plus, because they are LEDs, they're both really energy efficient and they should last a super long time. Now, we don't have very many outlets in that hallway. In fact, that's actually a big problem in the house in general. We don't have a whole lot of outlets in any of the rooms. It is something we are looking to upgrade for sure somewhere along the line. But what that does mean is that for the moment, I only have a couple outlets out there in the hallway. So I can just change the setting from dim to bright so that the nightlight kind of covers more area, really lights up the hallway a little bit better. And then if later down the line, I install more outlets in the hallway, then I can just switch everything to dim so that it's a little bit like more low, even light spread out along the hallway. So thank you so much to Snap Power for sponsoring this video. I think it's a really nice product, and if you are interested in giving it a try for yourself, you can follow the link that's in the description and use my code to get 15% off your purchase. They've got a few more products besides just the nightlight. This one is motion censored, but they also have ones that aren't, so definitely be sure to go check them out. Thank you once again for sponsoring this video, Snap Power, and now I think we need to go see what Phil's been up to this whole time.
I am making money!
You want to elaborate on that for us?
I'm cutting copper out. Just
Okay.
staying busy while I wait for you. There you go. So where the brick wall was going up, right here, you can see the foundation went down, but the brick wall didn't. So it was pushing upstairs on the hardwood floors and creating a big bump in the room. So we have been wondering why there is a really sizable bump here in the floor. It's almost half an inch up. Doesn't show that well on video, but you can see the black crack. And it turns out that downstairs the house moved down a little bit, but because of the brick wall that was added, the floor kind of rests on the brick wall now. So have been removing that brick wall downstairs. So you can see where the brick wall was all the way up. It was because the foundation went down, but the brick wall didn't move. It was pushing the floor up. You can see this floorboard is pretty up. So I've been removing the bricks here to relieve that pressure down there. And now I'm working on this side here. So it's just to go at it. Loosen things up. And then get rid of that so that the pressure here gets released. You can see like these I can't move because the floor is pressing on them. So just to remove what's under, go ahead it with a sledgehammer a bit more. And eventually I'll be able to remove everything. And here we are all done. You can see the insulation from inside the wall back there has leaked into that cavity here. But now this board here that was pushing up the floor is all free. All 4 or 5 bays are gonna be able to relax, and the first floor is gonna be able to go back down.
No. What? So at this point, we just felt like we had so much to do and definitely not enough time to get it done in. So we decided to grab some ice cream and sit down and make a list of all the things we could possibly try to get done in this time period, just get it all out on paper in front of us. And then once it was all listed out, it felt just a little bit easier to go through and prioritize things, try to at least get through the most important things done before we left. Perfect. I'm just gonna start down here. Winterizing.
Silk rock wool around the perimeter of the basement.
We've gotta close up the windows.
Maybe second the humidificator.
Our energy bill is gonna be through the roof.
It's cookie chunk and salted caramel.
Huh. Interesting. In a perfect world, new door.
Mm-hmm. That's a big one.
I wanted to hang curtains to help with draft.
Maybe dig that foundation hole in the front. Just stack brick.
What?
Just make sure the heating system is done.
Finish heating. I mean, that's honestly priority number 1. So, like, finish heating. Number 1. I would say after finishing the heating, next important honestly might be boarding up that window.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a gaping hole.
We could try to put an hour and a half of our time trying to find if there's any sort of reason why that board stays wet in the corridor. Go from the attic, anything that's semi-aligned, try to spot any little bit of water. If we can find why that keeps getting wet, that could be good. Attic, not much. Actually, the attic could have slightly cracked windows.
They are naturally slightly cracked. They're very much not airtight. But we're gonna run out of days. We got 3 days. 3 days. Correction, we actually only had 2 days because we had to leave at 5 a.m. on the 3rd day to drive back to Montreal. It's a long list for 3 days. With our list established and prioritized, we finished our ice cream and set to work. So after having made a list of the most important steps we have to take before leaving here 3 days from now, naturally the one that we decided to start tackling today at 7 p.m. is the one that involves, digging up our foundation. No big deal. Also, I hope you're enjoying Canel just having a fiesta down in the background there. So Phil is clearing out and trying to locate the existing foundation where that stops, because I'll tell you, fun fact, it stops several inches before our sill plate. For the record, your foundation is what your sill plate is supposed to be sitting on, and your house sits on your sill plate. So it's kind of important that your sill plate has a foundation. Ours does not at certain areas. So, wind. So this is all gonna have to be voiceover because what you see Phil doing right here is turning on some music, and since I don't want to get copyright struck, we're just not gonna use any of the audio from this video. So we started off by clearing out everything that was sitting in front of the foundation here to try to better assess the situation. This was just full of a bunch of debris and stuff. This area was kind of a landing zone for a bunch of, rusty cans and garbage. Just everything from the basement kind of had accumulated here. So we started by clearing all of that off, and once that was all clear, we realized we still didn't actually have good enough access. So then we decided to remove the first couple rows of siding from the house, just trying to get a better look again at that foundation. And as it turns out, those first rows of siding were soaking wet and really disgusting. So that was a fun discovery, but it did give us a bit better of an idea what exactly we were working with. As I was saying before the wind so rudely cut me off, we do not have a foundation under certain sections of our sill plate. So I will be scrounging a makeshift foundation from what I think was the leftovers of a coal cellar, a root cellar, basically, back here. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's pretty cool. I was kind of hoping to keep this feature, but it's more important that we raid it and keep the house. Homegrown foundation stones. Fun. Let's go take a look because we've got lots of pretty good candidates for foundation stones over here. Now, I did actually manage to find enough loose stones on the ground that I could leave the main structure intact, and maybe I'll be able to repoint it and restore it at some later date. But again, not the current problem at hand. Wheelbarrow was very much not up to the task. How's it going?
Looks like a long time ago this was a problem and they had rebuilt just a brick stack But with the water being here and what used to be a temporary foundation is now just brick dust everywhere. This seems to be a solid cornerstone, and it's probably a good place, at least for now, to just stack stuff up. It's going to be hard to butt it against the sill plate, but at least it's going to be something supporting the corner.
And then we spent the next few hours of the day stacking stone up under our sill plate. Now this is definitely not a permanent solution, but this corner of the house has been unsupported for who knows how long, and it is still standing, so imminent collapse seems unlikely. So even just a brief investigation of the situation has revealed that there is a lot of wind right now cutting into my audio. Yeah, digging into the foundation, that's where we're at the moment. Cars also at the moment.